12. And the first is, I'm asking council for a resolution authorizing the city to share in the cost of a mediator. Mr. Halsey, do you have a resolution to read?
Yes, sir. I'll read the title. Resolution to authorize Mayor Jerry Wood to represent City of Roswell in renegotiations and mediation or other means to accomplish state-mandated division of local option sales tax, and to authorize Mayor Wood to enter into agreement with other cities to share cost of mediation or other means to accomplish same.
Any agreement would have to come back to council for ratification, but a question has arisen among the mayors as who does the folks currently there have authority. But the real question is, and this has to do with expenditure of money, Wendell Willard had proposed that we go forward to mediation now rather than waiting until the end of August, trying to expedite this process. Either now or at the end of August, we'll need to go into mediation, and the cities need to agree upon how that cost would be split. And the consensus of the representatives is that we split it based upon the current sales tax split. So our share would be, 8.5%? And it will be fairly nominal for the cost of the mediator. So I'm really looking for authority to commit to paying our share of that mediation. Any questions? Councilman Orland.
My question is, are you talking about just in the mediation, starting the sharing the cost of the mediation? The resolution actually says in any renegotiations and mediations.
It could be a facilitation. We're leaning toward a mediation, but if the facilitator if we hired a facilitator now, by law we go into mediation in end of August, and there's a 2-month period of mediation, and we'll need authority to
well, my only point or question was, this really specifies you, and so I was thinking maybe we should have specified you or authorized representative or city administrator or city attorney, something in case you are not at a meeting or somebody goes in for you, because it was very specific in this resolution. That was the only point I was going to make.
I'm fine with that.
Or if Mayor Pro Tem sits in for you.
Mayor Pro
like
Tem, if that's appropriate.
Just minor change.
So you're suggesting that either the mayor or the mayor or the city administrator?
Mayor or authorized representative of the city.
Mayor or other authorized representative of the city. I'm fine with that amendment. Any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve with change.
Motion by Councilmember Wynn to approve the resolution adding or other authorized representative. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Orleans. Any further discussion? Does anyone in the audience have any questions? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll discuss security measures in the city of Roswell and hopefully come to a resolution tonight.
This item is approval of security and citizen information measures at City Hall. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito and members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to come back before you tonight, and I appreciate your patience in working through the security issues here at City Hall. I know it's been some passionate discussion, and we've looked at a lot of options at the last committee meeting. We had 3 options that we discussed in regards to what we could do with the City Hall security. During those 3 option discussions, we actually came up with a 4th option that I wanted to be sure and include tonight. And that 4th option has to do with using some of the current staff that we have, placing them in a little bit different areas within City Hall, continuing to move forward with putting up some security cameras that we would be able to have in place for recording of some of the access in and out of City Hall. We would use our current...
Go ahead and present the 4th option in its full form and then the other 3.
Okay, the 4th option is to install 4 security cameras within City Hall so that we can monitor or record the access into and out of City Hall. It would be the placement of some information kiosks as you come in on the ground floor to provide information in regards to what's going on within City Hall, some meetings, calendar of events.
So these would be digital?
They would be digital boards that would be set up somewhere very close to the entrance as you walked in, with touch screen information so that you can get answers to questions that are most commonly asked to the people that are currently stationed downstairs coming in the entrances now. We would have an information person outside in the rotunda on the main floor, because with this option, as with the other options, the main staircase would be accessible and the front doors would be opened. The metal detector on the entrance downstairs would go away. We wouldn't need that one. Court services will continue to maintain, as we always have, the metal detector up there. But access into and out of City Hall for the citizens and guests would be not have to go through the metal detector. We will have an information person downstairs, at least during the high traffic times. He'll have other duties that he'll be doing also. So it'll be him downstairs along with the cameras for recording and along with the information kiosk for the customer service portion of what we're trying to provide.
All right. Now, that information person, one time we had talked about that being the officer.
Correct.
So that information person would be the current police officer who is also assigned to keep security in the City Hall.
Correct. He still has other duties that he does here, but those are on a random schedule that he works out with the other departments. He has some interaction with the departments and with security rounds within City Hall, but we can work that in and out depending on the high traffic areas of people coming in and out.
So there would be no new personnel?
Correct.
Now, the budget to acquire and install the kiosk and the cameras?
The kiosks are estimated at $6,800. The cameras are estimated at $3,000 for a one-time capital cost of $9,800.
I understand we install the cameras immediately.
Those will be in by the end of the week.
And we'd come to council with more specific proposals on the kiosks.
We can. We have some a couple examples in your packet of what the kiosks can look like. And
you want to put those on the screen for the folks in the audience?
And they're currently designing what some of the information pages can look like.
We can have a further discussion to fine-tune exactly what we want those kiosks
Absolutely.
to be like. You know, what the questions would be and what would be reported, that sort of thing.
Correct. So this is just an example of the actual monitor that we would be looking at. It would be about that size. There will be two of them at each entrance. The top monitor will not be a touchscreen.
Two at each entrance or one at each entrance?
Two at each entrance.
Two.
There'll be one that will be scrolling information for City Hall. There'll be another one on the bottom that will be touchscreen with specific questions and answers that can be provided. This is just an example of what you can do with some of the trim and some of the effects that can go around it. These are nothing more than monitors that are put into a custom design type cabinet. We can mount them in the wall and frame them. We can have them surface mounted and frame them. So there's a lot of different ways that we can decorate and approach what we want the kiosk to look like. But the internal structure of that is nothing more than these monitors that I showed you on the last screen.
And they'll be hooked up to a computer somewhere in the building.
That's correct. There will be a program that will run the scrolling section for different information, and there will be a program that will run for the touchscreen. And then this option is just an option that shows what you can do with some of the trim around that. If we wanted to put some actual signage of things that don't normally ever change, we could even provide that where we have directional signage on it. However, I think we can cover that through the digital side of things.
Let's pause for a moment to see if the council has any questions about this option. Councilmember Diamond.
Did any of these have sound?
No, ma'am.
Other questions about this new option? All right, if you'll present the other three options.
The other three options included, the first option we talked about included basically what we have here, only we added staff to cover the information area for the downstairs. Instead of having the municipal officer being the one manning that on a kind of a semi-part-time basis, depending on workload. We could have somebody down there all the time, and I basically figured that in for a couple of part-time positions. There would be one person all the time, but it would be on a part-time status. So that's really the only difference in what the option number 1, which had a total price of $48,000.
Let's talk about the one-time cost and the annual cost.
The one-time cost would be the $9,800 for the equipment, and then the annual cost would be $39,000 for the part-time position.
All right. Does the council have any questions about that option? You'll proceed.
The second option that was put forth was basically taking option number 1, which had a person assigned to the downstairs, and not adding a new person and not using information people downstairs on the ground floor, but having the 2 kiosks set up and having the security camera, which goes in each one of these options. So the difference in 1 and 2 is whether we have a all-the-time part-time staff person on that ground floor.
And the third option?
The third option takes out the kiosks and goes strictly with security, which would be for just cameras for recording access into the building for $3,000.
And the fifth option, which we didn't mention, is continue the current security.
Absolutely.
All right. Does the council wish to make any comments before opening up the floor for comments? This time we'll hear from anyone in the audience who would like to speak on these options. Yes, sir. Come forward if you give us your name and address.
Jake Lilly, Roswell Station. I just would like to know what the current annual cost estimate is for keeping the metal detectors in place.
Mike, do we have that current option? Now, if we kept the current metal detectors in place, there's been a discussion of going from police to security personnel, which are not post-certified, not gun-toting.
Correct. Right now we have two post-certified employees right there, and the annual cost with the metal detector and benefits is $141,000.
And we could reduce that cost somewhat if we went to non-post.
We could reduce that cost to about $100,000.
All right.
If it was non-post.
Does the council have any questions about that? Other comments from the floor? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Name is Michael Reisig, live off of Beatrice Road. Going for the fourth option, couldn't we have a simpler setup, not a touch screen that was more cost effective, just the scrolling information?
We could. And I think the council is going to, the big decision tonight is security or no security and the personnel, and I think we're going to sort of have a further discussion about the specific kiosks. Even if we vote on it tonight, I'm encouraging the council to continue to consider that, because I think there's a little more discussion. They want to see a little bit more about that.
Okay.
But we were trying to, I know there's been a lot of interest in whether we continue the current expense or not. That's the big decision tonight.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just heard the kiosk and saw dollar signs.
Yes, sir. Anyone else would like to question or comment on this proposal? Seeing no hands up, do we have a motion? A suggestion?
Yes. I like option number 4. I think it provides us with an added level of security to what we have now with the cameras. I think it provides some communication to the public, which was one of the things we found out during this whole process, that the public needs a little bit more direction, and they are looking for more information as they enter the building, and that was accommodated very well by the police officers that we have there. So I think by stationing an officer downstairs, we can get some personal attention to folks that come in. I like the idea of the kiosk because it can provide them a wealth of information, and my understanding is we get into things such as online bill pay and really make use of these kiosks. So I agree with the mayor. I think we need some additional research into those and get some feedback from the council. I think Councilman Diamond's suggestion of potentially having some sound there. may make some sense because we could have RCTV videos and so forth playing on those as well. So we may want to look into that. So I would move that we move forward with option number 4.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito to select door number 4. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. It's wonderful to have a unanimous council.
Thank you very much.
And Jerry, you don't have to sit there and watch the RCTV if you don't want to.
I love it. I love it. It's my favorite station. This time we'll call upon Councilmember Nancy Diamond, liaison to the Community Development Department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is approval of a valet parking agreement between the City of Roswell and Patterson Parking Incorporated. Ms. Alice Wakefield is here to tell us more.
Thank you, Councilmember Diamond, Mayor and Council. What's before you is a lease agreement between the city and Patterson Parking, Inc. This agreement will last for a duration of 1 year, starting August the 1st. It will allow Patterson to utilize 2 of the city lots. Here. In the Canton Street area, the one lot off of Mimosa, which has approximately 24 spaces. The second is a smaller lot, which is East Alley, and that would allow for valet parking on 14 spaces. This service will run from Monday through Sundays, commencing at approximately 5 p.m. The consideration is that 60% of the net revenue each month will go back to the city. With that said, we ask that this agreement be approved.
Even though it's for a year, is there an early termination clause?
Yes, sir. 30 days, both parties.
So either party without cause can terminate?
Yes, sir.
30 days notice. Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Wakefield, this agreement is between Patterson Parking and the city for our 2 lots that are 38 spaces. Do they have agreement with other property owners at this point?
Yes, it's my understanding that they do have agreements with other property owners in the Canton Street area. The city lots are just a small portion of their service of where they have parking available.
I'd like to invite the vendor to come forward and tell us who they have contracts with, just so we'll get that on the record. That was important to me.
We currently operate the Canton Street Antique Market lot, the front spaces and the back spaces, and also starting on August 1st or shortly thereafter, we have come to an agreement with the Pastes lot on the corner with Jimmy Vaughn to operate that entire lot, as well as a handful of spaces in the back of the building.
What's the status of the Wells Fargo negotiation?
Wells Fargo is also a fairly done deal. We're just waiting for someone to come forward and cross some T's and dot some I's, is what I was told.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Wakefield, we have 38 lots between the 38 spaces between the 2 lots. Do you know how many spaces we could potentially have with valet?
How many? Yeah. How many spaces?
The one lot behind the buildings there, the one off of Canton Street behind Go With The Flow and the bakery, is not a huge space. With the 14 spaces, we estimate around 25 to 30. The other lot off of Mimosa over there by Wells Fargo, if we are able to valet the whole thing and not use the diagonal spaces, we're looking at an increase from 24 to approximately Again, it's a guess until we get out there, but probably 35 to 38, somewhere in there.
For the record, what hours is this valet parking going to be in effect?
It would start at 5 p.m. in the evening.
Every day?
Every day, yes,
now,
sir.
Prior to 5 p.m., the parking would be free, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So we would go from 38 to potentially as much as 65. So that's a pretty significant increase. Thank you.
Councilmember Orleans.
Perhaps you can clarify, I originally thought we were talking about the busy days, like Thursday through Sunday hours, and now we're talking about every day? Because I thought Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday weren't busy days.
It's in the contract, but we would not be out there on any days that would not benefit either one of us. We put 7 in to have that available. There are certain situations that we've found that, for example, Tuesday nights has been one of our fairly busy nights. So whether that'll trickle down to the mimosa lot, I don't know, but it certainly would probably benefit us at the lot off of Canton Street, which is more centralized and receives more traffic flow. So to answer your question, 7 days is in the contract, but I don't know that we will operate the lot 7 days a week.
So just based on the amount of business, you may not be out there Monday or Wednesday nights.
Correct.
Just disappear.
Correct.
What are your plans if we sign this initial for the first week? If we sign this tonight, what's the plan for the first week?
The initial plan is to try to get started by Friday. We have...
I know, but how many days a week initially?
We'll probably start, especially in the summertime, which we've seen a decrease in business. We'll probably be out there Wednesday through Saturday, possibly Sunday.
All right. I think it's important for folks to know a little bit in advance of what these free days are and what they're not. So, could we add to that? I think it's important to me for the merchants and other people to know, not on a week-to-week basis, but some sort of a month-to-month basis or something. Do you think that's possible?
For them to know what the hours of operation will be?
Yeah, no, not the hours. We know what the hours are. It's 5 to whenever, but the days of operation.
But which days of the week? I'm pretty certain that we'll, after at least 2 weeks, possibly a month, we'll have figured out what the regular schedule will be.
All right. What do you think would be a reasonable time period to say to notify people what that was? I mean, so it wouldn't change like overnight.
You're saying as far as how much time do we need to establish what the busy nights are going to be? When you start, let's say it's going to be Wednesday to Saturday. And then what I'd like folks to be able to know is for this week it's going to be Wednesday and Saturday, and have a little plan ahead. It's next week it's going to be not from day to day it could change, but I'm trying to ask you what would be a reasonable time period to make these adjustments, because I don't want to see it happen daily or... No, we'll establish a regular schedule out there.
What I'm looking for in the contract, I'd like to say that we will, that you will give us notice that how much notice before you change what those are.
It's in the contract.
What does it say?
7 days.
7 days. All right. Well, I apologize for asking all those questions. It's good that you're ahead of us. So you give us 7 days notice. So just as tonight, we'd be going Wednesday to Saturday because of, given this notice provision. Is that what we're saying?
Well, correct. But we will not be started on August 1st. It'll probably be Friday.
Friday. But that initial week, it would be Wednesday to Saturday.
The initial week would be Friday, Saturday.
All right. So Friday and Saturday the first week.
Correct.
And then you give us a week notice if you're going to expand that.
I can give you notice now that the next week it'll be Wednesday.
Okay, well go ahead and...
And hopefully it'll be Wednesday through Saturday for the...
Just recognize as you change these, you need to give us... You can give us a year's notice, but not less than 7 days notice under that contract.
Okay, and who receives that notice? Okay. All right.
All right. Other questions or comments? I would like the motion to include the commitment that monies raised do not go to the general fund, but are spent within the district. Do we have a motion?
I'm going to throw my comments in there, too. I want to point out that this is one step in the long-term process of dealing with parking in this area. This is not an easy solution to find because most of this property is privately owned. And we as the city have no interest in telling those property owners how they are going to put this into play. This has been something that Mr. Patterson, who is a Roswell resident, has identified and has gone basically door to door to collect different properties into a form that he believes will get us a couple hundred more spaces in the immediate area to help us solve the short-term problem. As you can see, our city lots are a very small piece of this. It does not include the street parking. It does not include City Hall parking. It is strictly those two lots at this stage. And hopefully we're going to progress with some kind of longer-term solution that will help with our dumpster issues, with our parking issues, and with a number of things that have come along on Canton Street. There are a lot of different owners. There are a lot of different tenants. There are sometimes 3 different entities responsible for any one property, and not all of them are in the same place or on the same page. So it is quite a long process to get consensus all across the board, and we appreciate this one resident's patience in going, because it has been a process to go through and do this. I did speak with the Wells Fargo representative, and he did indicate that they have every intention of going forward with this. It's just being a corporation, it takes a little longer to get paperwork through. And I did speak with a couple of the other owners who are very much on board. I want to point out there is an allowance that Patterson makes for some self-parking if a person does not want their car parked by someone else, as well as if you're there for takeout, there's opportunities to do that. He's been very accommodating with businesses on different sites and accommodating their workforce and working around that. And I can't think of anything we've thrown over there that they haven't said, okay, we'll figure that out. So with that, I would make a move to approve this valet parking agreement with the caveat that any proceeds from it go into a separate fund that will be used either toward the long-term solution here or something in the Canton Street area.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. One more question, and I'll recognize folks from the audience. What will the fee be coming to the city? What will that be, and what's it based upon?
The fee is based on the amount of business, so 60% is going to be a different number each week.
All right, so 60% of the receipts, gross receipts, would go to the
60%
city.
of net receipts. So
net receipts. So how do we define net receipts?
Net receipts is the only cost that is in there is labor.
So it would be revenue minus, we'd get 60% of revenue minus the cost of labor.
Correct.
Do we have any estimate of what that could be?
I have no idea how to place a number on it until we can kind of see exactly how many cars we can fit in the lot.
We can terminate, with either party can terminate in a week's notice, so we're not making a 30 days notice, so we're not making a colossal commitment. We're making a 30-day commitment. But we hope it is successful for both parties.
We do hope it's successful.
All right. I see a hand up in the audience. If you'd like to come forward, give us your name and address, please.
Sorry, I'm very inquisitive and fairly uninformed on this issue. I guess my question is, I was trying to understand and follow along, are these private lots that we're talking about, or are these lots owned by the city?
There are 2 lots owned by the city. They are in green on the screen. In addition, there are lots also in the vicinity that are leased. What we wanted to try to do was try to find one person to handle all of the lots. It's more efficient, it's less confusion, and I think it leads to more profit at the end of the day because the labor costs are down. So it was important to us that we were not just dealing with a person who was only had these lots but had other lots tied up, and that's why we brought up the other lots, not because we're getting revenue from them, but we wanted to try to create a system approach.
And the only reason I raised the question is I think anyone who owns private property should be able to have a contract with anyone they choose to valet cars. I think that's a great thing, and it solves a lot of traffic issues. My concern is with the public lots that it seems to me, and maybe there's already been discussion about this and y'all have drawn some conclusions, you can educate me on it, but it seems to me that the taxpayers have already paid for these lots and now they're going to have to pay again to park there. And I don't understand that.
Mrs. Diamond, there is logic. This is not, we're not charging this for revenue, but I think Nancy Diamond can explain the logic behind why we felt valet parking was the right way to go.
Yes, sir. Actually, the reality is on those particular lots, you've probably never had the opportunity in the public to park in them because they're full with employees of the businesses on Canton Street. And that is part of the equation. It's not something we can regulate. It's not something we can discourage. We found in our interaction and our research with the citizens and the different valets, there is more than one valet company in the area, that the feedback has been, we want to be close, and we're fine with that. It's the convenience that we're looking for. And the reality is that convenience has not come on our city lots because they've been filled up at 5 o'clock before anybody can get them, and they don't turn over. Whereas, the valet lots turn over 2.5 times often in a busy evening. So it's not like we're taking away something. It's something that really has not been available because our lots are situated where they are, which is, I'm not sure how we ended up with these lots or how that came to be. But
there are two other advantages. One is, as you heard, you can squeeze more people onto a valet lot when your professionals are parking and they can double park. So there was a greater efficiency in the parking. And the third advantage is there's security and cleanup. The labor also provides eyes on the street, and they're responsible for cleaning up these facilities after it's over. So we measured the pros and the cons, and again, we're committing to make sure that this money is spent within the district so that the merchants realize this isn't a taxing. We're going to turn it back around to spend it in the district. So it was really a way to try to create more parking for the customers and these restaurants.
Thank you for your explanation.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Wakefield, in paragraph 6, the last sentence was cut off. It says net revenue shall be determined by, and we lost the rest of the paragraph. Do we know what the original intent was there?
Without that sentence in there, it's pretty clear. I don't know where that was going.
Well, we need to clean it up before we pass it.
Maybe that was to explain further that the net revenue is after labor. It's the only thing I can think of that might have gotten cut off.
So really, the only expenses would be
is the valet's labor.
Okay, and all the equipment they use, that's
our cost.
That's your cost. Okay. I guess Ms. Diamond will handle that in the motion.
I have another question from the audience. Yes, sir. If you come forward, give us your name and address.
After heard, reviewing news, I just have one question. What is the rate? What will I pay to park there? Is it an hourly rate or a flat fee? And how
We'll
much?
hear from Mr. Patterson.
It's a flat fee of $3.
Is that written into the contract? Do we want to include that in the contract? I think it would be appropriate to include it in the contract. I know, either party can terminate upon a week's notice, but, the more certainty, 30 days, but I think the more certainty, the better it would be. Do you have any objection to putting $3? And I would encourage the council to include that $3 fee in the contract. That's what everybody's anticipating,
right.
And because we're all anticipating, I'd just like to make it express.
If it were to raise, it certainly wouldn't do so in the first year.
I see another hand up at the rear of the room, and I've got some questions on council.
Good evening. My name is Tim Early. I work for Patterson Parking. Something I'm not sure if it's actually in the contract. I just wanted to bring it up in case it's not. For Live After 5, at our current location on Antique Street Market, we come in earlier because if we come in at a normal 5 o'clock, all the spaces are taken. So it seems like it would be beneficial to conclude that we're able to come in earlier to start setting up and charging earlier so the spaces are available to valet and they're not already taken up by the time we show up.
Well,
is it in there already?
Well,
okay.
we did place in item 2. It says that we had covered the 7 days a week, commencing at 5 p.m. And then it says or agreed on from time to time by the parties, and at such other times as reasonably requested by establishment and agreed to by valet. If that needs to be more clear, the reason that is in the contract is in case there is a special event of some sort, whether it be one of the bike races that have currently come through or Live After 5 especially.
Let's be more specific about that. You'll read that provision again? What does it say?
It says valet shall perform valet parking services Monday through Sunday commencing at 5 p.m. each day or as agreed on from time to time by the parties hereinafter referred to as regular hours, and at such other times as reasonably requested by establishment and agreed to by valet. And that's also upon 7 days' notice.
So, Ms. Halsey, would this be a council decision, or how do we work this?
Within the framework of the contract, it would be an operational decision that Ms. Wakefield would make based upon the policy of council. I think she's pretty aware of what council wishes on these big events.
Just for clarity, I'd like to designate the Director of Community Development Department to
and
make those decisions.
While we're on that subject,
if that's the will of the council.
Also, while we're on that subject, we will show up to the lot for setup probably 3:30, 4 o'clock on the days that we operate the lot. The 5 o'clock is just when the charge starts. So I don't know if the contract needs to state that we will be on premises starting at 3:30 or 4 o'clock.
I have some questions from council to my right. Councilmember Price.
I know we've been talking as if it's understood where the revenues will go, but I don't know if that needs to be clearly delineated at this time, or if the presumption that it is going into this area is precise, or the rationale for it not just going into the general fund.
Yes, Councilman Orleans.
I tend to agree. I agree that we have it in a separate fund so we know what's in there and where it's coming from. But I don't think it should be part of this motion tonight to designate it's only going into that area, however we define the area. I think that's a decision of council through the budget process on what it may or may not be used for. So I'm not sure I agree with that little addendum either.
As Sam Evans said, it's good to keep your word if you make it. If the council wants to represent to the public that that's where it's going to go, I think we need to put it in the motion. But to me, it's much more defensible if we make it clear to the public we're going to spend it there in the district. And if we're going to spend it in the district, I'd like to put it in the resolution so that we don't have any double speak coming from up here.
Well, I guess my question is, are only the people that live in the district paying this. As has been brought up earlier, these are public lots. People from all over the city are going to be coming to use them and out of the city. So the money is going in, and I understand and agree with all the logic on doing this and providing it and maximizing the spots. I don't see the reason or the logic to have to designate it's only going to be spent back there. They're city lots for the city, and the money can be kept separate but be used as the city deems. And yes, I know our intent is to try to help the entire parking situation there. I just don't think that little caveat should be in this motion.
Have someone from the floor would like to comment?
Good evening, Janet Russell, 260 Willow Springs Drive. I have a real big problem with money being collected on public lots and then designated for very few citizens' use. We've already coddled and done everything we possibly can to Canton Street except give them everything. It's a success, and that's really, really nice. However, I tend to agree with Mr. Orleans. This is public money. And I don't think we need to say it's just for people on the merchants and the businesses on Canton Street. As a public taxpayer, I support everything in this city, and there are other areas of this city that could use that money. So I have to say that I really object to money being specified, collected from public property, supported by taxpayers. The public property is. A valet's fine. I don't really care about valets. I can walk there if I wanted to. But I think it's really awful that you will collect money and designate it for a particular district in this town. Better it be put into the hospitality industry in general. We certainly have a lot of areas in this town that could benefit from whatever money you make. But I really have to say I completely am against money being designated for a certain part of the population just because the geography says that their parking is there.
I appreciate that position. I believe the Canton Street benefits the entire city. I don't believe it's being spent on any individual. We've talked about putting in public. One source might be putting in trash cans for collecting refuse in the public, which right now is being paid for from the general fund. We talked about the idea of maybe a trolley down the road, maybe other parking. I'm trying to make sure that the money that is raised for parking in this district goes for parking, and it's not seen as another source of revenue for the city. I think it's a source of revenue for the district. But I appreciate your position. I think it's reasonable minds can disagree. Councilman Price.
Well, again, I want to restate my original concern that we limit ourselves into what it can be used for, and it may be an offshoot of the success we've had on Canton Street, but it may not be necessarily in the historic district. Therefore, I think we would be foolhardy to restrict it so heavily that we might have a good purpose for it that's well related to the reason that we collected it, but it might not necessarily be in those narrow parameters. So I would like to amend the motion to either delete or modify that part of it. I don't recall the exact wordage.
All right, we have a motion. We have a motion to amend. Is there a second to the motion to amend? Second. A motion and a second. All right. Before we take votes on those two, I want to see, is there any further discussion on either the motion or the amendment to the motion? Councilmember DiPolito.
I have a question about the amendment to the motion. How are we specifically amending it?
Good question. Good question. I think your comment was you'd like to amend it so that it would be spent maybe not for any purpose, but for limited purposes outside the district. You need to be more specific.
I asked for the exact wording of that portion of the amendment so I could word my amendment.
Well, before we vote on an amendment, we could furnish that language, because we do need to be specific in the amendment. I need to know what the amendment is going to say.
Can I start over on the amendment, on the whole thing, and we'll just... we need to...
Go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the Community Development Director to sign this contract and to enter into the agreement with Patterson Parking.
Excuse me. The mayor or the city administrator needs to sign the contract. She'll just be the designee to carry it out.
Okay. Do I need to word that, or can I just say the intent and then you guys make it work? Okay. So Community Development Director will be the designated contact on this to make decisions where it talks about the establishment, I think is the term that's used in the contract. I'd like to amend number 6 to the last line to say net revenue shall be determined by subtracting labor costs from gross receipts. I would like it to have in there somewhere that the fee being charged to the customers is $3 flat rate, and that we put the money into a separate fund that is tracked individually.
I think Mike Fisher suggested it'd be a designated. What, Mr. Fisher? What would be the language you want to use?
The the funds will still go into the general fund, but under the new accounting terms, it'll be going into the general fund, but it would be designated funds. So to say that it would go into a separate fund is sort of a technicality. It will go into the general fund, but it will be listed as a designated fund for something to be used.
Okay, and then we can have that discussion, because I think once we come to some of these other things that are headed our way with the Canton Street area, I think that will be a little more clear, and once we see how much money there is. So
were you saying a designated fund, the purpose to be determined at a later date?
yes, but the way Michael put it.
All right, so it's going to be in a designated fund, but we're not really, you're not deciding tonight how that designated fund is going to be spent.
Right. It will be in the general fund under a separate number so that we can track it.
And it'll be designated, and we'll determine later how that designated money may be spent.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion. I thought we already had a motion, but now we have a new motion. Do we have a second to that motion? We have a second. All right, I'm back to the amendment. Does the amendment need to stand, or is that leaving it to be decided later address your question?
I think that amendment, I think that new motion, assuming that the old motion's gone, I think that
the old motion's considered gone.
Okay, so I think that new motion is adequate, assuming that designated isn't too restrictive, and I'm still not sure what it's designated to.
So the designation is, if we pass this tonight, it will be sort of in suspense until the council designates something, and I'm going to encourage Councilmember Diamond to come forward with a designation within a reasonable time period. It will take a while before we build up a fund enough to argue over.
We don't know what labor costs are, do we? Okay, I'm happy with that, so I have no amendment to offer.
You withdraw your amendment?
Yes.
Councilman Orleans, are you withdrawing your second?
I will withdraw my second and go along with this motion, as long as it's not being specific.
We haven't. We'll decide how specific it is at a later date. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We're adjourned.